March 8th, 1979. A quiet Brooklyn morning. A white Cadillac Fleetwood sits parked on a residential street. Nothing unusual, nothing urgent. By sundown, it will vanish. So will Louis Capora and his young wife, Joanna. Their bodies have never been found. That Cadillac was bought with a dead man's arrogance. $6 million from the Lufansa heist. Money that was never meant to see daylight. In Jimmy Burke's world, one reckless display of wealth didn't just break the code. It triggered an erasure. What sealed their fate started 3 months earlier, with a van that should have been destroyed. December 11th, 1978. The air around JFK's North Cargo ramp hung cold and silent, broken only by the low rumble of a black Ford Econoline van idling in the shadows. 6 men moved with the precision of a practiced crew, faces set, eyes darting between the terminal's floodlights and the distant hum of aircraft. Each man wore gloves, not just for the cold, but for the promise of what came next. No prints, no mistakes. Inside the terminal, the night shift barely registered the presence of strangers until it was too late. The crew worked fast, pressing guns into backs, ordering silence, and herding workers into a break room. No one screamed. Nobody ran. The plan had been rehearsed for weeks. Every lock, every corridor, every camera angle was memorized. The van's rear doors swung open against the concrete lip of the loading bay. Under the harsh white lights, stacks of cash cartons, bundled, coded, and stamped with Lufthansa's insignia, were rolled out on metal carts. The crew loaded them with a quiet urgency, sweat beading on brows despite the winter chill. Each carton was heavy, packed with bills, $5,875,000 in cash, plus jewelry, all counted and logged by airline handlers just hours before. The men moved like cogs in a machine, one loading, one watching, another checking the manifest against a crumpled slip of paper. No one spoke above a whisper. The only sound was the scrape of cardboard and the click of the van's sliding door. In the driver's seat, Parnell Stacks Edwards gripped the steering wheel, glancing at his watch. Timing was everything. The van's engine idled, ready for a quick getaway. As the last carton disappeared into the van's cargo area, a nod passed between the crew, silent confirmation that the haul was complete. The van rolled out of the terminal, headlights off, merging into the endless grid of Queen streets. Behind them, not a single alarm had been tripped. Not a drop of blood had been spilled. The entire operation, from entry to exit, took less than 30 minutes. Somewhere in the back of the van, Louis Capora's name was already on everyone's mind. He was not on the scene, but his role was waiting. The man who could turn dirty cash into clean money. The launderer with a network of parking lot fronts and a reputation for keeping things invisible. But for now, the focus was escape. The plan called for the van to vanish. It would be burned, stripped, erased from the earth. Every man in that crew knew the rule. Leave no trace. In the world they inhabited, a single fingerprint could mean a death sentence. And tonight, with $6 million in the balance, there was no room for error. Parnell Stacks Edwards pulled the black Ford Econoline into a quiet street in Canarsie, Brooklyn, the van's engine ticking as it cooled in the December night. The job was over. The cash was gone, stashed away in hands that knew how to keep it moving. But Stacks, running on nerves and adrenaline, made a choice that would echo through every corner of the crew's world. He left the van parked outside his girlfriend's apartment, a modest brick building wedged between a bakery and a shuttered laundromat. The neighborhood was the kind of place where people noticed strange cars, where a work van sitting too long drew eyes and whispers. Stacks was supposed to torch the van, erase every trace before sunrise. That was the rule. No evidence, no questions. Instead, he staggered inside, the weight of the night pressing down. Music drifted from a back room. Friends called out. A bottle passed from hand to hand. Edwards, still wearing the same gloves he'd gripped the wheel with, dropped onto a sagging couch and let exhaustion take him. He laughed too loudly, told stories too freely, never glancing at the window where the van sat in plain sight. The party stretched late. Cigarette smoke curled under the hallway door. By dawn, Stax was asleep, his shoes still on, the keys to the van shoved deep in his pocket. Outside, a neighbor walking her dog noticed the unfamiliar vehicle, a black van, windows fogged, streaks of mud on the tires. She hesitated, then scribbled down the license plate. By lunchtime, a patrol car rolled past, pausing just long enough for the officers to radio in the number. The van's plates pinged on a list flagged for stolen vehicles. Within hours, the information reached the FBI New York field office. Inside the van, the crew's careful planning unraveled. The steering wheel, the door handles, the dash, all surfaces touched in the rush to unload millions. No one had time to wipe them clean. While Stax slept, federal agents traced the van's registration, built a timeline, and began to close the circle around every man involved. Back in Brooklyn, Luis Capora heard the news with a sinking feeling. The van had been found. The air in his own apartment felt thinner, the walls closer. He watched Joanna move through the kitchen, humming as she set out coffee, unaware that a single lapse in Canarsie had set a slow fuse burning beneath their lives. For the crew, the rules were simple. Lay low, keep your mouth shut, don't draw attention. But the van left behind in the open had already called the law to their door. The black Ford Econoline sat under a pale winter sun, its presence already a problem for anyone who knew what had been inside. By mid-morning, a patrol officer radioed in the stolen plates, and the van's fate left the hands of the crew. The number was punched into the DMV system, a routine plate run that, this time, would upend everything. The computer flagged it almost instantly, linking the van to a registry of vehicles used in organized crime. Within hours, the van was cordoned off, and technicians in powder blue gloves began their work. Inside, every surface told a story. The steering wheel, the door handles, the metal lip of the loading bay, each bore the faint whorls and ridges of hurried hands. Crime scene techs dusted and lifted latent prints, careful not to miss a single mark. They used chemical sprays to coax out what the naked eye could not see, photographing each print, cataloging each card. The process was methodical, almost clinical, but the stakes pulsed beneath every step. Back at the field office, the prints were fed into the FBI fledgling automated fingerprint identification system, a prototype, but fast enough. The computer word, compared, and matched. Parnell Stax Edwards. His record was already in the system. The identification took less than 3 days from the moment the van was found. 72 hours from a neighbor's curiosity to a federal arrest warrant. Word traveled quickly. The FBI relayed the match to the NYPD Vice Squad and the Secret Service, forming a task force before the crew even realized the net was closing. Each agency brought its own files, its own suspicions, and now a name. For the men who had counted on silence and clean exits, the rules had changed. The evidence chain was set, and the pressure ratcheted up with every new fingerprint card. No one in Burke's circle could ignore the sound of the law at the door. Not even Luis Capora, who watched the news and felt his hands start to sweat. Luis Capora's days fell into a rhythm of counting bills, scanning mirrors, and watching the faces that drifted through his parking lot empire. Each lot was supposed to be invisible. It was a place for commuters to leave their cars and forget, but the money coming in was anything but forgettable. Cash deposits stacked up at the Citibank branch on 58th Avenue. sometimes 5 figures at a time, sometimes just under. The numbers didn't add up. No parking lot in Brooklyn could explain that kind of flow. Not in winter, not with half the spaces empty and the city's economy on ice. He felt it first in the way tellers paused when he approached the window, how a manager would step out from the back to watch as the deposit slips slid across the counter. Bank forms, always in triplicate. The air in the lobby seemed to shift, heavier, as if the walls themselves were learning his routine. Louis's hands sweated through the paper, but he forced a smile, made a joke about the weather, and left as quickly as he could. At night, he told Joanna the books were clean. She smiled, trusting, and poured him another cup of coffee. Behind the glass, a federal task force pieced together a pattern. Forensic accountants pored over ledgers, noting the same names, the same Friday deposits, the same sequence of bills, always crisp and always fresh from the Federal Reserve. Internal memos bounced between the FBI, NYPD Vice, and the Secret Service, each one stamped with a new level of urgency. The numbers didn't lie. Louis's lots were washing more cash than they could ever earn legally. By February, a judge signed a stack of warrants authorizing surveillance, wiretaps, and surprise inspections. Louis's world shrank. Men in unmarked cars began to linger near the curb. Joanna noticed, but Louis brushed her off. He told himself he could keep the story straight. But every time he heard the phone ring, he felt the law closing in and the rules of the street tightening around his throat. The door to Robert's lounge swung open, letting in a blast of winter air and the gleam of something no one could miss, a brand new white Cadillac Fleetwood, its chrome bright as a knife under the streetlights. Louis Capora stepped out, keys dangling from his fingers, grinning as if he had just won the city. The car's pink leather interior glowed, a detail meant to be seen, not hidden. Inside, the regulars fell silent. Glasses paused mid-air. Even the jukebox seemed to hush, every eye drawn to the spectacle parked outside. Jimmy Burke watched from his usual table, face unreadable. He had preached the rules again and again. Keep your head down, spend nothing, let the heat die. But here was Louis, parading the score for all of Brooklyn to see. Someone at the bar muttered that he was asking for it. Louis laughed, tossed his keys to a friend, and slapped him on the back. Have you ever seen a ride like that? That is how you celebrate. Burke stood, glass in hand, and walked over. The room tensed. He raised his drink, his voice low but carrying, and said congratulations. The word landed heavy, stripped of warmth. Louis' smile faltered for a second. Around him, the laughter faded. No one missed the message. In that moment, the Cadillac was no longer a trophy. It was a warning, a bright flare marking Louis as a problem. Burke did not need to say more. The code was clear. Pride made you visible, and visible men did not last. Louis felt the eyes on him, the sudden drop in temperature. The party went on, but the celebration had curdled into something else. Outside, the Cadillac waited, white and perfect, already carrying the weight of its owner's mistake. Burke's warning echoed in the back rooms and alleys of Brooklyn, traveling faster than the news of any police raid. The rule was simple: keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, and above all, don't bring outsiders into the circle. But Louis, restless and cornered by the tightening net of law enforcement, couldn't hold the silence. Every night, he rehearsed the story for Joanna, softening the sharp edges, pretending the danger was just a rumor. She listened, trusting, brushing his hand with hers, never suspecting the weight of what he carried. After the Cadillac incident, Burke's patience snapped. The directive was delivered in clipped sentences. No more spending, no more parading, no more talk. The crew understood. Louis tried to obey, but fear made him reckless. He confided in Joanna, needing someone to believe he could outrun the storm. She became his confessor, his only safe harbor, and in doing so, crossed an invisible line. In Burke's world, civilians were never to be involved, especially not wives. The code was older than any of them, and breaking it carried consequences no one could talk their way out of. Rumors spread through the bars and corner stores. Louis was talking too much, flashing too much, bringing eyes to places that were meant to stay in the dark. Joanna's innocence became a liability. She knew things she shouldn't. The circle closed, silent and final. By the first week of March, Burke's decision had hardened. The order was given. Louis and Joanna were now a risk that had to be erased. The Cadillac, once a symbol of triumph, sat idling at the curb, waiting to carry them toward an appointment they would never return from. 13 minutes, 58 seconds. A grainy security reel from a Broadway storefront captures the white Cadillac Fleetwood easing into a left turn on 58th Street, its chrome flashing in the afternoon sun. No faces are visible, just the glint of a car that should not be there. The license plate fragment barely readable. The city's traffic camera at 5th Avenue and 34th Street logs the vehicle again at 14 minutes, 12 seconds, a silent witness as the Cadillac threads through the weekday gridlock. Each movement leaves a timestamp, a ghostly trail through Manhattan's arteries. 14 minutes, 37 seconds. The 20th Precinct's blotter records an officer stopping a silver Cadillac for illegal parking at 45th Street and 8th Avenue. No citation issued, no names written down. The officer notes the model and year, then lets it go. Nothing in the entry hints at the car's significance, but the detail lodges in the day's official memory. 15 minutes, 2 seconds. NYPD radio dispatch sends a TOW crew to the FDR Drive, eastbound at exit 12. The call describes a 1979 Cadillac Fleetwood, stalled, possible mechanical. The dispatcher's voice is clipped, routine. At 15 minutes, 45 seconds, the tow impound ledger confirms the car's removal to the 23rd Precinct lot. Truck T71 assigned. The vehicle is logged, parked, and left under a gray sky, its presence reduced to a line in a recovery book. 16 minutes, 20 seconds. A freelance photographer snaps a black sedan, later identified as the same Fleetwood, parked near 2nd Avenue and 42nd Street. The photo's timestamp matches the police ledger. By 17 minutes, 30 seconds, an FBI surveillance log, heavily redacted, places the Cadillac near the Brooklyn Bridge, the last official sighting before the trail goes dark. Each record is dry, procedural, but together they form a lattice of certainty. The Cadillac's journey is mapped in numbers and initials, not in blood or confession. No one sees Louis or Joanna after these entries. The car's physical trail ends in bureaucracy, its story frozen in film reels and logbooks, the final evidence before everything slips into rumor. No one ever saw Louis or Joanna again. After the last official sighting of the Cadillac, the city's records fall silent, leaving only rumors and the cold logic of what happens when the mob decides someone must vanish. Theories multiplied in the vacuum left behind, each one whispered in the back rooms of Brooklyn, each more chilling than the last. Some said Louis and Joanna ended up in an industrial compactor, their bodies reduced to nothing inside a waste plant, supposedly tied to Louis's own parking lot fronts. But no records, no OSHA filings, not even a missing persons report from the plant's night staff ever surfaced. Others believed the couple were sealed in a steel drum and dumped off the Long Island coast, left to sink in the Black Atlantic. The Coast Guard logs from that week show no suspicious activity, and no fishermen ever found evidence, just empty water and the weight of unanswered questions. A third rumor pointed to a vacant lot in Queens, a patch of dirt owned by a Burke associate. The ground was never turned, and aerial photos from 1979 show nothing but weeds and broken glass. Each theory circles the same void: no bodies, no confessions. The case file lists Louis and Joanna as missing, not murdered. Joanna's voice, so present in the small routines of her life, coffee, laughter, a hand on Louis' shoulder, disappears without echo. Louis, who once walked with the confidence of a man who thought he could outplay the rules, is reduced to a question mark in the city's ledgers. The real cost is measured not in the millions stolen or the headlines written, but in the empty spaces left behind. In this world, erasure is the final punishment, and the silence that follows is absolute. Even now, the white Fleetwood is more than a missing car. It is a silent warning, glinting under streetlights, a monument to pride and betrayal. Louis' secrets vanished with him, but the code that sealed his fate still governs the shadows. The rules have not changed. In the world of organized crime, the price for one mistake remains absolute. Some disappearances are never solved. They are only repeated. Share your thoughts below.